Welcome back to Scared of Reddit. Thank you for joining us in the darkness once again. Tonight's story isn't one of ghosts or ghouls, but of a horror far more tangible, rooted in the sticky, humid air of the American South. It's about a man, a dark accusation, and a system that nearly buried him alive. This is Anthony Ray Hinton's story. Imagine it's 1985. You're a young man in Birmingham, Alabama. Life is simple. You work hard at a locked warehouse, you go home to your mother's house, and you dream of a future that feels steady and secure. The air hangs thick and heavy, smelling of summer rain and industry. It is a life like any other, until the day that world shatters with the sharp metallic click of handcuffs closing around your wrists. The accusation: 2 murders, committed at local fast food restaurants. The evidence against you: 2 old, rusty revolvers, pulled from a dusty corner of your mother's home. You know you were at work, 15 miles away, locked in. You know you're innocent. But in that moment, your truth doesn't matter. The case against Anthony Ray Hinton was built on a foundation of sand. The entire prosecution hinged on the testimony of a single state-appointed firearms examinant. In a sterile courtroom that smelled of old paper and floor wax, this expert claimed the bullets from the crime scenes were a perfect match to one of the revolvers found in Hinton's mother's house. His alibi was ironclad. He was working miles away, secured inside a locked warehouse, a fact that should have been his salvation. Instead, the state focused its entire narrative on those 2 bullets and that one gun. Hinton, a young black man in the Deep South, was provided an inadequate defense. His own lawyer, tragically misinformed, believed he couldn't afford a qualified ballistics expert of his own, and instead hired a civil engineer with a visual impairment who was utterly outmatched. The scales of justice were not just tipped, they were broken. The jury returned a guilty verdict. The judge's words were a death knell. Anthony Ray Hinton was sentenced to die. In the blink of an eye, his identity was stripped away, replaced by a number. He was moved to death row, a place where time itself rots. The world he knew, the smell of his mother's cooking, the feeling of an open road, was gone. It was replaced by the unyielding cold of concrete and steel. Years bled into decades. The world outside changed in ways he could only imagine, while his world shrank to the size of a concrete box. The taste of metal and disinfectant was a constant companion, the only flavors in a gray existence. The sounds were monotonous: the distant clang of a gate, the murmur of guards, the soft weeping of men who had lost all hope. He was buried alive, entombed in a system that had already forgotten him. But even in the deepest darkness, a sliver of light can pierce through. That light came in the form of attorney Brian Stevenson and the Equal Justice Initiative. They took on Hinton's case, refusing to let an innocent man die. They began the painstaking, decades-long process of dismantling the state's case, piece by piece. They focused on the very foundation of the conviction, the flawed ballistics evidence. They brought in 3 of the nation's top ballistics experts, true masters of their craft, to re-examine the evidence. And their findings were unanimous and explosive. The state's original expert had been wrong. The bullets from the crime scene did not and could not have come from Anthony Ray Hinton's gun. It was a lie, a catastrophic, life-destroying lie. Even with irrefutable proof, the state of Alabama refused to concede, fighting for another 12 years to keep him locked away. Appeal after appeal was filed and denied. The case eventually reached the United States Supreme Court, which, in a rare unanimous decision, overturned his conviction, affirming his right to a competent defense and a new trial. Faced with the mountain of evidence proving the original ballistics were unsound, and with no other evidence to present, the prosecution finally gave up. The charges were dropped. On a spring morning in 2015, after 29 years, 8 months and 23 days on death row, the heavy iron door slid open one last time. He stepped out not into the Alabama of 1985, but into the disorienting brightness of 2015. 30 years. Gone. Anthony Ray Hinton was a free man, exonerated completely. He had spent half his life in a cage for a crime he did not commit. His story is a chilling reminder of a different kind of horror. It has no ghosts, no monsters lurking under the bed. The terror here is human. It is the horror of injustice, of a life stolen, and the terrifying knowledge that a system designed to protect us can become the very thing that entombs us.